the July 18th regular board meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. Welcome to Harris Hall. Hello, Ms. Markowski. How are you doing this morning?
I'm great, thank you, Chair.
Good to see you. A reminder to everyone that if you look through the back window, you'll see Lane County Farmers Market in full swing this morning. Do we have any adjustments to the agenda, Mr. Markowski?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, we do have a single item that will be pulled from the consent calendar. Vice Chair Trigger, do you have something?
That was what I was going to note, Chair, the DA item.
Can you go ahead and cover that then?
Sure, that we should strike item B1 from the consent calendar. It will come back to us at a future date, as I understand.
Item B1 is now stricken from the consent calendar, which we will approve or we'll consider. Any further adjustments from the board? I'm seeing none. There was a change to the originally published agenda from last Thursday, which has been noted in the updated agenda online today, which is we will have an afternoon executive session today. So with that, any emergency business, Mr. Markowski?
No.
All right. Any from the board? I'm seeing none, so we'll go directly into public comments. Your public comments will entertain public comments from folks who are here in Harris Hall initially. That'll be followed by public comments from anyone who may have signed up online. When your name is called, please step to the mic, state your name for the record, and keep an eye on the clock on the wall. It says 3 minutes. At 3 minutes, I'll be asking you to conclude. At about 30 seconds before 3 minutes, you'll hear an audio alarm. Don't let that interrupt you. Just continue with your testimony until the 3 minutes is up, at which point the next person will be called forward to testify. If you have written testimony, you can always turn that in, click online, and you'll find out how exactly to turn in written testimony. So this morning we have, first, we have Heidi Ringus, who will be followed by John Profit. Can you step forward to the mic, please, and identify yourself, and then you'll have 3 minutes. And keep an eye on that clock on the wall right there.
Pressure's on. Hi, my name is Heidi Ringus, speaking on behalf of Mr. Profit. And I was wondering if the board has had a chance to review the information that we sent that was the subject of the July 11th afternoon meeting, which we watched on the webcast.
So you sent information to the Board of County Commissioners?
Yes, we had, Mr. McCorsky had told you that we had sent, he had forwarded the information that we sent him. We had also sent each one of you your own personal. You might want to check your spam folder because unrecognized emails get shunted into spam.
Okay.
So, but we sent all of you the information that none of which was used for the PM meeting. So basically the whole meeting was in conjecture because you had half of the information and the narrative was being spun that, you know, there was one issue this whole time for 10 years, which is not true. And as a matter of fact, we have all of the documentation to prove that right here, which I want entered into record. So for every time they've claimed that there was a notice excuse me, a notice of the, I'm starting to stutter, the new permit, the commercial permit. Thank you. There was one notice of a commercial permit that did not come until George Kaiser in 2023. At no time before that was he ever required to get a commercial permit, or all of the permits. His permit, original permit, was not only extended, it was reinstated a couple of times and extended and extended again because of all the delays that the building department kept putting on him and all of the new goal lines that they kept setting. And so we want this, you know, to disprove all of the things that he was accused of in the afternoon meeting. I went and copied the transcripts and noted point for point everything that was wrong that was said. And I have all the proof to back each and every point up right here in this folder. So just wanted to get that into the record. I have a rebuttal letter, and again, Mr. Profit's edited timeline because of the new research and the new information that we found. All the edits are noted.
Thank you, Ms. Ringus. Next is John Profit, who will be followed by Bob Shute. There's good, thank you.
Good morning, I'm John Prophet. I have been explaining to you people how the building department has harassed and driven people away. Oregon is a one-side recording. I happened to find a recording on my phone from Harvey and Price when I attempted to get them to do the project. I sat with them on Friday and they said, yeah, this is the kind of thing we do. We'll just check with the building department. We'll get back to you and work it out. And now I want to play it into the record.
Thank you for calling Harvey and Price. How can I help you?
Good morning. Is Jason or Justin available? I
Certainly.
keep going to their voicemails and all I get is voice messages and I don't get any response back.
Okay, then I'm going to put you each customer and let me know. I'll put you on hold for a minute. I'm going to holler, see who I can get on the line. I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, that's good. Sorry for the music.
Okay, I've got Justin available, so he's going to take your call right now. One moment.
Thank you. Justin. Good morning, Justin. John Prophet. Hi, John. How you doing? Oh, you tell me. I'm just curious, are you guys going to do the project?
I talked to our operations department here, and unfortunately, we can't. So,
Okay, but I just needed to know that so I could continue on.
yep. I'm sorry, but yeah, there were some red flags there, and yeah,
The problems
concerned with it.
with dealing with the county?
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
All this fun.
Don't erase it on yet.
I continuously am told that I do not comply. I comply. I ate up time trying to chase down two people that they drove away with the sprinkler system and had to go out of state to find somebody, and then they refused to approve the permit from the engineering exactly what they'd asked for. And here's a list of the times that I called these other two sprinkler companies, which they didn't get back to me. Here's George's letter now telling me I have to have a commercial permit on a residential property, and my original permit is R3. I could build condominiums out there. I'd like all this in record. Thank you.
Right there is fine, Mr. Prophet. Thank you, Mr. Prophet. Next is Bob Shute, who will be followed by Cliff Shute. And Mr. Shute, if I mispronounced your name, please correct me. Could be Shute. I've heard it both ways.
Good morning. My name is Bob Shute. I'm the owner of Northern Lights Christmas Tree Farm in Pleasant Hill. We're a 164-acre property, and over the last 10 years or so, I have been working to get a building permit for a separate residence for my son. Presently, we have 3 tax lots on that property. We have 2 homes that are registered on 2 of those tax lots. And about 5 years ago, we employed the services of a local land use law firm, and they worked diligently trying to get us a building permit. They did establish an individual tax lot, which was previously, we were taxed for but unidentified. They got that clarified, and in taking that to the building department, we got negative responses. The lawyers came back with a long list of things that were required. We said, wait a minute, Mr. Lawyer, there's got to be a simpler way to do this. We took up the case with another land use attorney, and he says, Bob and Cliff, you can do this by yourself. Just go down to the county building department, find out what they need, and proceed with that. In so doing, we were totally rejected by the building department. We were turned away. We were told this can't be done. This is impossible. You need to go get a land use attorney. And I left there with the opinion that the land use department was not there to serve the public. The land use department was there to serve, I don't know who, but definitely not the public's interest. And I'm here to complain. I still want to proceed with this project, but in dealing with the building department, Lane County, it is futile. It's a terrible thing to have to go down there and deal and plead with them and be turned around and have delays after delays. I'd like to ask the county commissioners to take a look into this. As an organization of the county, it is not functioning well. And speaking for myself, it is not functioning well relative to the needs of the population here in the county. That's my story for you today.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte.
Thank you.
Next is Cliff Schutte, who will be followed by Daniel Basaraba.
My name is Cliff Schutte. I'm a resident of Springfield. Let's see, I'm a 24-year teacher in Springfield Public Schools. That is my official job. My side job is son of farmers who would like to help my aging parents with their farm. The reality is that to try to do that from town is a 15-mile commute each way. It's expensive. It's involved, and it also causes great separation for my own personal family, as I'm gone a lot during the summer. It's my summer job. It's also my Christmas season job. It's also my weekend job. My wife and I moved forward in looking into building a house on the farm, 164 acres, plenty of room, no issues with exclusive farm use and the minimum size being 25 acres. We can make that work. Willing to purchase the property from the landowners ourselves and build the house in accordance with whatever rules and regulations there are for building a house now. We started that process looking at possibly replacing an existing dwelling. We looked at that process of possibly putting in a hardship. A hardship is not something reasonable for us. We would like a home, not something that can be removed. As we started the process and putting in applications, spending our own money, employing land use attorneys, we were encouraged that this was going to be an easy process. You can follow forms, you can fill out things, you can give information, you can provide plot plans. I've made it this far. I think we could do this without paying attorneys exorbitant fees. That was not the case at all. Eventually, each time we went in, we were given information about how difficult this was going to be, that this was going to be a 3 to 5 year process just to establish whether or not there could be a lot line adjustment done to the property. Again, 164 acres, 25 minimum. There was no questions about whether or not the income from the farming aspect would be met. There was, the planners continually came back with, this is really difficult, you really should be involving attorneys. I went through 3 different planners before my wife and I finally said, this is going to take us too long. We are going to be too old to be building a house, let alone my parents still there. The family farm may not exist because the help is not there, and it is not reasonable to bring other people in. The family farms do not pay for the family farms all the time. Please look into this. This isn't fair for everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schutte. Next is Daniel Basaraba, followed by Jeremy Choret or Choret. Sure, thank you.
Morning. Last week, after Mr. Farr was about to request that the board start looking into these cases, Keir Miller conveniently was lying in wait to intervene in this matter. So I'd like to touch on some of what he had to say. I had filed for the appeal last Monday, but only because I could not get it reviewed by the board in time. Staff has been refusing to send my file to the board. You guys have seen that via email. Cost me an additional $1,400 in county fees and several more billable hours to my attorney. I'd invite you to read the denial that I received this week for that review. You'll read it and you'll see that clearly the hearings official didn't give it a second thought. The appeals process currently in place is flawed because we're asking a human to go back and agree that they made a mistake within the last month. Generally, people will admit they made a mistake in hindsight and things like that, but generally not that close. It's still current and relevant, and I don't think she wants to admit there was a mistake made. My next point has to deal with the conflict of interest that probably all of us can see, probably most of you can see, that Ann Davies is not an impartial third-party hearings official. Ann Davies represented Land Watch, which is an activist group that seeks out judgments in favor of denying landowners the use of their land where they can. Ann Davies was the attorney for that group for several years, and overnight, the previous hearings official was removed from his spot and Ann Davies was put in his place. To me, as Keir mentioned, I was attempting to do some forum seeking by appealing to the board. I would say that that's likely why Ann made it to that position. I think the LMD has sought out a favored hearings official. My next point would be that historically, the board has reviewed cases that were ambiguous at all, and staff is not willing to send those to you guys right now. I don't know how many you've seen in any of your tenure, but it's very few and far between that staff would review something for a board review. I think Keir said the quiet thing out loud. I think that him saying that there's a current agenda or a feeling amongst the public that LMD seeks to deny is correct. I think that he was accurate in that statement. The U.S. Constitution and the U.S. or the Oregon Supreme Court, as well as the United States Supreme Court, has ruled that where there is an interpretation to be made on land use stuff, it is to be made in favor of the landowner, not in favor of Land Watch or in fear of Land Watch. If Land Watch doesn't like something, they can appeal it to LUBA. Right now, the current system in place causes all of us to have to go to LUBA, and many of these folks just give up because it's too expensive. And so they've effectively silenced us and asked us to go away and not continue to seek our property rights and further what we would like to in our lives, as you've heard from some of these other folks today. So I would ask the board to please step into this. I'm going to submit these two statements as part of record from other folks that
Thank you. Right there is fine.
has to be heard. Thank you.
Next is Jeremy Shearer, who will be followed by Jamison Bruce. Janessa Bruce, I beg your pardon.
Good morning. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jeremy Shearer. Live at 8048 Thurston Road in Springfield. And you have an application of me for filling a vacancy in the Charter Review Committee, and I'd like to talk about that a little bit. So it's been about 60 years since our home rule, and much has changed, but some things haven't changed. We've changed economically, socially, politically, demographically, but we haven't changed in other ways too. We still call this our home. We still care about our families. We still get up and go to work, and so the routines of life are very similar. I think the Charter Committee's challenge really is how does that structure get the county, and I mean the people included, how do they get to where we need to go? So I've listened I've participated, I've read minutes from this Charter Review Committee, and to date, we've heard from staff, and they've made a lot of good suggestions. But I think we're missing one aspect, and that's hearing from the public. There was an attempt to gain feedback through a survey monkey poll, but it seems that one only really reached out to people that are actually engaged. So my question is how do we get out to those who are, disenfranchised, those who are marginalized, and those people in the public that maybe don't even know that there is a Charter Review Committee. So this far, my observations have been addressing some issues, and these are mostly suggestions from staff, but one of them is to change the county name, talking about some of the budgets in Section 36. They've been talking about elections, voting, campaign financing, redistricting, elections of the sheriff, and so on. So these are all worthy topics and need our attention and further investigation. So the first question that the Survey Monkey asks is our county government responsive to the needs of the public? And there's a lot of answers to that, and there's probably as many answers to that as there are citizens. So with a clear answer, we could ask ourselves how much and to what extent should the charter be changed. Without a collective understanding of where the people want to go, the best we can do at this point is maintain status quo and just fix some of the little things as county staff proposes. So if you're looking for someone who cares about the people, wants to improve upon what we already have, I'm here to serve at your pleasure. I'm applying for the Charter Review Committee and ask for your, vote. I don't know, however that works.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you.
Next is Janessa Bruce, who will followed by Haley Lesh.
Good morning. My name is Janessa Bruce. I am a fourth generation with me today, in my mom's arms, on our family property out past Coburg, just a little bit. I'm basically here to stand in solidarity with all the other land use people here today. We want to stay here forever. We love it here. My grandma came here back in the 60s, and it's our dream to build our home on our family property. I could go into all the details, but basically it's the exact same thing that everyone else has said. It's been years, it's been lots of money. Every time we go, we're told, sorry. I have actually tried to employ a couple different land use attorneys to help us with our applications, and they basically said, sorry, we don't even want to take it. So an attorney won't take money. I could go into all the tiny details, but basically we just want you guys to know that there's a lot of us out here who are having issues, and I'd really appreciate if someone took a look at it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bruce. Next is Haley Lesh, who will be followed by John Franklin.
Hi, guys. I'm Haley Lesh. Lived in Lane County all my life. I now actually work in land development as a career, and I just wanted to kind of add to the voices here today saying it does really seem like there is a problem at the county building department and that they do not want to be approving any applications, do not, see or do not lean towards seeing towards property owners, and that I just implore you guys to talk about it, think about it a little bit more, and maybe help provide some oversight and accountability to the building department. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lesh. John Franklin, and John Franklin is the last person signed up in Harris Hall.
Good morning. I'm John Franklin. I'm here in support of John Prophet and what he's brought to you. My expectations and my hopes are that you folks are reasonable and fair, and I believe you are. I haven't had but minor problems with the building department myself, but I've known John Prophet since before his project started. I know he got his permits. I've seen the plans. They were engineered. He's had trouble. They said, oh, we need something else engineered. He's had it engineered twice. It was a residential house, and I always wondered why he wanted such a big house, but he was always enamored in the Winchester House down in San Francisco area. And he also brought up the fact that he liked, well, it was a movie that was somewhat like that. So I went along with him and I helped him out. I was a licensed electrician and I helped give him information on how he should do the electrical. He's overbuilt the house. Everywhere it needs a 2x6, he's put a 2x8 or 2x10 in. Electrical, you need 6 feet between, electrical outlets. He's thrown them all down the wall. He's done everything that the county has asked for, and it's been a moving target, I know. He's weathered the crash of 2008. He's weathered the recession, the Great Recession after that, and he's weathered COVID. He's been building this basically by himself, so it does take time. It's not something you just go out and do. And as he's been building, the targets moved. The requirements have moved. And I don't know why you're asking, or the building department's asking, for a commercial permit. It's a resident, it was a resident, and it is a residential house he's building. It's just a big house. And they asked him to put in fire sprinklers. Well, you don't have fire sprinklers in your house, your residence, but they asked him to put it in his house. And then they say, okay, you have fire sprinklers in, now it's commercial. Well, it's not commercial, it's a residential house. And I would hope that you'll read what he's brought you and read it with purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Franklin. And Mr. Franklin was the last person sent up in Harris Hall. Ms. Jones, I understand we have testimony online. Can you handle the online queue, please?
Thank you, Chair Farr. At this time, if you have signed up for public comment via the website, please raise your virtual hand and I will call upon you for public comment in the order your hands are raised. I will also be offering you an opportunity to go on camera if you would like. So with that, our first person is Meredith Wadlington. Meredith, I will unmute your microphone and ask you if you would like to go on camera as well.
Sure. Hello.
Okay, one moment and I will switch you over to camera and you should see a button that allows you to accept it and go on camera. And Marilyn, I see you have accepted, and once you are on camera and unmute your microphone, we will begin your timer.
Hello, my name is Meredith Wadlington. I work for a statewide organization called Unite Oregon. We're a statewide advocacy organization that, along with our partners, the Health Justice Recovery Alliance, is working to make sure Measure 110 is implemented the way that voters intended it to be. So I'm here today to give you an update on on Measure 110 and how the law is unfolding in your county. This is an exciting time for Measure 110. It's the year that Measure 110 is finally getting on firm footing. New data released in June by the Oregon Health Authority reveals that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of people receiving addiction services funded by Measure 110. Tens of millions of dollars are being diverted to services from the expensive, harmful, and ineffective criminal justice system to instead fund evidence-based addiction treatment. Lives are being saved, families are becoming more stable, and communities in every county in Oregon have access to new services that were not available before. Oregon is finally starting to see some progress in addressing the root causes of addiction. And at the same time, concrete steps have been taken to improve the law and make sure that it works for Oregon. In June, the state legislature passed House Bill 2513, the Hope and Recovery Act, and the governor signed the bill into law. This legislation matters because it not only keeps our state's commitment to increase the availability of free local services for people struggling with substance use, but it also provides for an increased oversight and accountability, more timely distribution of funding, and redoubling the implementation of proven public health approaches to addiction services and treatment to make Measure 110 more effective, transparent, and accountable. Last month, the Oregon Health Authority released, and you can find all this information later on their website, and I'll send a follow-up email, a new report on the number of Oregonians across the state who have received services through Measure 110 instead of being cycled through the criminal justice system. This report showed that the number of people seeking substance use treatment through Measure 110 instead of through the criminal justice system increased 44%. People in recovery, it also showed the people in recovery who are provided housing services through Measure 110 programs increased more than 125%, while those provided with supportive employment services through Measure 110 increased by 136%. Oregon's public health response to addiction gives us a tool that no other state in the country has in fighting the nationwide overdose crisis. Measure 110 addresses not only addiction itself, but the root causes of addiction. It ends the revolving jail door that keeps people trapped in addiction and despair. Addiction is not a crime. It is an illness, and it's time to treat it as such. I will, if you're interested in hearing more about the programs and the providers in Lane County, we would be happy, Health Justice Recovery Alliance and Unite Oregon would be happy to return.
Thank you for your public comment, Meredith.
Great, thank you.
Our next speaker, actually, I do not see any more hands raised. I do see a couple other people online. If you would like to give public comment, please raise your hand and I will call your name and unmute your microphone. Wait one second, see if any more hands go up. So far, I do not see anyone else who would like to give public comment, so I'll return to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. At this point, then, I will ask anyone in Harris Hall, anyone who has not spoken, has not testified so far, do you wish to testify before the Board of County Commissioners this morning? I see no one. Public testimony is closed, and I'll turn to the board for responses and/or remonstrances. Looking around the board. Commissioner Lovall.
Thank you, Chair. I've got to digest a bunch of this. We had some great things happening today. There again, here we have some more people coming together to talk about our issues with housing. This is a serious problem that I want to tell the public that the county commissioners are taking very seriously. We're looking into every case of how to deal with this and to hear your appeals and that sort of thing. I want the public to know that even though many of these people have contacted us directly, by nature, we have to keep some distance. So in case those cases come before us as a board, we have some degree of non-bias. So I'm just asking in general for the patience of those who have made their time to come and give us their testimonies to bear with us. This is a process, and we're in that process to the fight. Many of us are fighting for your rights, as we believe the rights of property owners should be fought for. I do want to make a couple of comments. I do believe that government is given to those who show up. So I want to thank everyone for showing up. I want to thank especially Jeremy Shearer for showing up and giving his testimony about why he should be the new appointee for our Charter Review Committee. Known Jeremy personally, and I think his recommendation is high, and I would support him in doing that. Also, for those who have worked with the difficulties of Measure 110, we know that's a real emotional issue. It's an emotional issue with me. Some of the issues that we face as a family with my own son, with some of the programs and things that were going on, I think that Measure 110 still has a long way to go. I think the statistics that we're hearing are certainly, they sound promising and and they're working, but typically when the program was starting from nothing and you get something, obviously the percentages can be skewed. So in my opinion, Measure 110 still has a long way to go, and I think perhaps we should take a serious hard look at it, and all public support, all public input I would welcome, so that we can have the facts and the will of the people within the purview of what Measure 110 should be about. So it's a challenge to everyone. Thank you for your public testimony. Government works because you work it. We work for you. Don't forget that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Laval, for the remonstrances or response. Commissioner Senega.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank everybody that came out today. I do want to say that I believe our LMD department does a great job day to day, getting permits in and out, the bulk permits and the inspections done. Clearly, there's some oddities out there. I would like to note that these oddities take a good deal more staff time, and that we are working through these, and we'll be here to back you guys up as needed. Jeremy Shear, thanks for your testimony for our charter review. And Meredith, thank you for our update on the Measure 110. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Senega. Anyone else? Then a couple of things real quickly. Regarding Commissioner Laval's testimony and being patient, any issues involving the hearings official, if it were to come back to the Board of County Commissioners, typically would come back as what is called quasi-judicial, at which point any commissioner who had ex parte communication regarding that particular issue would declare that during the preamble to any discussion on any of the issues that involve the hearings official. Just wanted to mention that. And second is just a matter of personal contrition, shall we say. Last week, Vice Chair Trieger was speaking, and I stepped in during Vice Chair Trieger's speech, and she had to ask me to not interrupt, and which at that point I ceased talking. I didn't interrupt. Now, as the chair, this tool is any time that that interruption needs to take place for point of order, whatever it may be, the gavel is used. And Commissioner Trieger, that's something that you can count on me not doing again. That interruptions during Commissioner's speech is something that we should avoid. And even with points of order, it's important that we follow the protocol, Mr. Mokryski. Just wanted to pass that along. So, with that, any further discussion? Then that concludes remonstrances and/or other items from the board, and we'll move along to the consent calendar. We have a fairly lengthy consent calendar today. As we noted earlier, the item B1 has been pulled from the consent calendar. And Vice Chair Trieger, regarding the consent calendar, it will be considered in a single motion. If you go online, you can click on View Material, and you'll see each item on the consent calendar and all the information that the board has reviewed before allowing this on the consent calendar. Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, July 18, 2023, with the striking of item B1.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Lovell. We have the consent calendar. Discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously with the single item pulled. Then we'll move down the agenda to, that is a long consent calendar, Ms. Mokryski. A lot of you items on that.
Good thing you did it in one vote.
Then we'll move along to Public Works. We have the first reading and setting of a second reading and public hearing on ordinance number 2305, which is in the matter of amending Lane Code LC 16.290 to incorporate an allowance for accessory dwelling units, ADU, in rural residential zones, as allowed by Senate Bill 391 of 2021 and Senate Bill 644 of 2023. And an allowance for conversion of a historic dwelling to an ADU as allowed by House Bill 3012, 2017, and adopting a savings and severability clause and declaring an emergency. Mr. Mokryski, I will ask if you will introduce your panel, please.
Thank you, Chair, and an exciting update on this issue. So Rachel Surzlov, our Senior Planner in Land Management, is here to walk you through this item, knowing that the board is anxious to discuss it.
Thank you, Mr. Mokryski, and good morning, Chair and Commissioners. For the record, this is Rachel Sursliv, Staff Planner for the Code Amendment for the Accessory Dwelling Unit, or ADU, allowance. And this is a first reading of Ordinance 2305, also identified as Land Management Division, file number 509 PA 22-05378. And this is a code amendment project that's initiated by the Land Management Division to amend the zoning code for rural residential zoned areas to allow the development of accessory dwelling units. And these amendments were prompted by the passing of Senate Bill 391 and Senate Bill 644, which authorized the development of ADUs in rural areas, subject to certain standards. These amendments also include allowances for conversions of historic dwellings to accessory dwelling units. That was authorized by House Bill 3012, which was passed in 2017. And so given the similarity to the other ADU provisions, we are proposing to adopt those with these same code amendments. On July 19th of 2022, a public hearing with the Lane County Planning Commission was held regarding this project, and the commission deliberated on the topic and motioned to forward a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to adopt the proposed amendments. At that time, the Planning Commission had motioned to make minor revisions to the code regarding the applicability of the statewide wildfire risk map. However, since the Planning Commission made that motion, the link between the statute authorizing ADUs and the statewide wildfire risk map has been removed by Senate Bill 644. And so this bill allows jurisdictions to move forward with allowing ADUs independent of the statewide wildfire risk map, which is still under development at this time. So the item before you today is a first reading of the code amendments and requests that the board set a second reading and public hearing for August 1st, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. time certain. And at that time, staff is going to provide a more comprehensive staff report on the specific amendments. And there will also be an opportunity for public comment at that time. And that concludes my summary for today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Sursliv. I'm tongue-in-cheek here. We're allowed 5 minutes for this item, and just reading it takes more than 5 minutes. So bear with us as we go beyond the suggested time. Any questions or comments for Ms. Sursliv? Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of comments. I was reading through all of the packet material. It was a great nighttime bed read, I must say. This is super exciting, though. As a developer and a builder and a creative person, I'd like to see all these people in our rural communities take advantage of this. I mean, we have the potential to build 3,000 homes, I mean, in a rural county, which I think is really great. A couple of the things in there, though, flagged me, and I could be wrong in interpreting this, so help me clarify this, is one of the things on item 6A, I'm sorry, this is item 6A. On page 8, they were talking about the wording that semi-restricts certain covenants for what people can do with their ADUs. And the question that came to mind first was, here we are telling people a restriction of what they can and can't do on their properties. And that kind of draws a red flag with me, even after they've made a significant investment in their properties. The average square footage of the ADU, or the limit, rather, of the ADU is 900 square feet. And in today's dollars, that is anywhere between $225,000 and $270,000 worth of investment. And so as I'm looking at that, if I put myself in the position of the rural homeowner and I'm going to invest that kind of money, but yet the county is asking me for certain covenants of what I can and can't do with that property, that bothers me as a county commissioner representing the people that are in the rural counties. These people have properties, they've invested in it, and they're going to invest a few $100,000, not to mention time and permits, but yet we're restricting the uses of it. So I think we should look at what those restrictions really are. I don't agree with some of them, so I think there could be some discussion. At the core, I think the Board of County Commissioners believes that we want to create more housing, but I think limiting any potential for rural income or the potential to make income on those investments by farmers who are typically struggling with family farms, like we just heard this morning, I think is the wrong approach. So I'd like to see us take a hard look at that. And the reason I say that is the vacation occupancy code that was discussed in the reading. The ADU must not be allowed to be used for vacation occupancy as defined by ROS 90.100. Applicant to record a restrictive covenant stating that the ADU will not be used for vacation occupancy. Then it goes into the conditions, and some of the conditions, as you well know, say that they can't collect rent later than 6 days in advance. They can't rent it by the day. It can be rented week to week or month to month. A person that stays there can't have any other permanent place of residence. I'm not sure how you're going to enforce that or dictate that. And it can't be basically a vacation rental. So to me, I hate to say this because this is kind of a gray area. It almost seems like there's enough holes in the rules that someone could still operate some sort of a temporary stay in their ADU on a vineyard or a tree farm or something like that, even with all of the covenants in places. So I'm really questioning why the covenant is even required. And then the last question on that particular item is this going to be mainly complaint-driven? I mean, typically everything we see in land management and all is complaint-driven. A resident that lives near the guy who builds an ADU is ticked off because someone played their bass music too loud or something. So I'm wondering about that. The second thing about this is on page 12, and it concerns the ADU from rehabbing an historic building that, quote, is deemed dangerous by the quote. And that also is a restrictive covenant. It says, furthermore, staff has included language that requires a covenant to be recorded by the applicant that acknowledges that the ADU may not be rebuilt if it is deemed a dangerous building due to fire, to help ensure that the applicant is aware of the requirement. Well, I'm trying to be really tactful here. Forgive me, but if I spend $250,000 building something on my property and the next summer it gets burned by some errant wildfire and I can't rebuild it, I'm not going to be a happy camper. So the thing about dangerous building, the language in there also raises a red flag with me, is that if this is a historic building, wouldn't the danger of any asbestos, chemicals, building material already have been abated as part of the permit process? So why in earth are we saying that if someone converts a historic building on a piece of rural land, if it gets destroyed, they can't replace it? Isn't in the code somewhere, is what I read as a developer, is that when someone gets destroyed, there's a place in there for like for like. For example, we had a stairwell in one of the back of our buildings that was too steep for code, but yet it was rotten. We could replace it for like, even though the pitch was not in current code. So I'm wondering why that isn't written into this historic ADU conversion as it should be. Any other building that gets destroyed should be able to be built like for like. So that's my question there. And I think that's probably enough discussion for you. Those are my two issues. Thank you, Chair. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell, about this very specificity of your comments. Further comments? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I'll just move to approve the first reading of ordinance 23-05 and to set the second reading and public hearing for August 1st, 2023 at a 1:30 p.m. date and time certain.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. This means that any further comments will be to the motion. So any comments to the motion? Very well. Mr. Slut, thank you for the presentation this morning. Without further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. See you soon.
Thank you.
We'll move on down to item number 7A, which is Order 2307-18-010. And prior to reading that in, I will call on Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to declare a conflict of interest as this involves St. Vincent de Paul, and I am related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul. And in this particular item, it is considered for me an actual conflict of interest since there is a financial transaction at play. I'm going to step out into the hallway, and if somebody could let me in when you're done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. We'll give you a moment to get outside. Very well. We have before us item number 2307-18-010 in the matter of approving one amendment with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the amendment. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll just note this would ordinarily be on our consent calendar, but we separated it to allow for Commissioner Buck's recusal. So with that, I'll motion to approve Order 23-07-18-110 in the matter of approving one amendment with St. Vincent de Paul and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the amendment.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Excuse me, Commissioner Lovell. The first person to my left is usually Commissioner Buck. So I will state that anybody who wishes to take a look at the details of this, as with the consent calendar, click on View Items, and you'll see the details that have been considered before, almost putting this on the consent calendar, but removing it for a separate discussion. Any discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes 4-0 with Commissioner Buck recused. Thank you, Ms. Gray, for being here this morning. Director Gray. And we'll give Commissioner Buck a moment to rejoin us. Welcome back, Commissioner Buck. You missed a lot. And I'm sorry the snacks are all gone. We'll move down to item 8A on the agenda, which is from the Sheriff's Office. We have order number 230718-11 in the matter of submitting an application to the Oregon Department of Transportation in the amount of $411,433 for a 3-year traffic enforcement grant and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the application and execute contracts if awarded. Sheriff Harold is not with us this morning, and nor is Deputy Chief Wilkerson. Is Lieutenant Glessner with us? Okay, then we'll, and Captain Mann, if you want to step forward to the, okay. Are you a part of this discussion, Ms. Taylor? If so, please step forward. Then I'll introduce Ms. Becky Taylor.
Good morning, Chair Farr and Commissioners. I'm Becky Taylor. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner in Public Works, and I'm here today because I wanted to provide context for this request. I started an effort to create a Transportation Safety Action Plan in 2015, and at that time, Lane County had more fatalities from traffic crashes than any other county in Oregon. We evaluated all of the crash data. We consulted stakeholders. We looked at best practices across the nation, and we developed this plan, which the board adopted in 2017 to get at systemic issues. And what we learned is that this problem is a public health crisis. There are too many people dying as a result of crashes, a lot of innocent people. It's a leading cause of death for people under 15. And we know that we can prevent so many of these crashes.
Excuse me one moment, Ms. Taylor, and we'll ask Chief Wilkerson and Lieutenant Glessner to please step forward to the podium. Thank you. We got done a little bit quicker with our agenda, moved forward a little bit quicker than we anticipated, and Ms. Taylor has given us a brief on the history of fatalities and the lack of safety on Lane County roads. Please, Ms. Taylor, continue.
So the issue is that we can prevent so many of these fatalities, and so this is really important that we provide some interventions, and so that's why I'm here today, is to really provide support and to provide that policy context. And now I will defer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief Wilkerson. And
First, my apologies.
Good to see you this morning.
Commissioners. I'm sorry. We had a little bit of a full schedule this morning. I've got a little bit of a bug, so I'm handing this over to Rich, who hopefully can cover most of this for us. So Lieutenant Glessner is going to present for us.
Good morning, and thank you for your time. We'd like to present this proposal to you. The Sheriff's Office is moving for approval to submit a grant application to the Oregon Department of Transportation for the amount of $411,433. This would be for a 3-year traffic grant. It would provide the Sheriff's Office with most of the funding to staff 1 FTE for 3 years. We would work with the board to find the funding for the remaining $100,000 a year, and that covers our deputy's vacation, startup cost, and operating cost that the grant just won't cover. This grant-funded deputy would be dedicated to traffic enforcement, focusing on dangerous driving behaviors which have proven to contribute to our fatal crashes, such as excessive speed, driving while intoxicated, and reckless driving. The traffic enforcement deputy will focus their efforts on the county roadways that have seen the most serious and fatal crashes. As you all know, for the last 10 years, Lane County is ranked among the top 3 counties in the state for the most traffic fatalities. In 2020, Lane County suffered 16. In 2021, that number jumped to 30. Last year in 2022, our county had 51 fatality crashes. That's a 219% increase over the last 3 years. Yes, I do have some slides. And those are the crashes. And can we, next slide. Unfortunately, these increasingly high annual numbers directly correlate with the dissolution of the Lane County Traffic Team in 2011 due to budget cuts. Prior to it being dissolved, there were 21 deputies dedicated to just traffic enforcement. In these years, from 2008 to 2010, we wrote an average of 12,600 citations a year. In the past 3 years, deputies have only written an average of 2,500 a year. Next slide. Impaired driving is one of the leading causes of our traffic crashes. This slide shows our annual DUI arrest when we had a traffic team, as opposed to our DUI arrest over the last 3 years. The fact of the matter is, our current patrol staffing numbers don't provide our deputies time to stop the impaired drivers before they crash. Many of these DUI arrests over the last 3 years have only happened after the crash occurred. You've heard this before. There are 3 proven elements to reducing these fatal crashes: education, engineering, and enforcement. Enforcement is the one element our county is missing. Without the ability to enforce our traffic laws, our crash numbers will only grow. We all drive on these county roads. We all have seen the reckless and dangerous driving behaviors. We all have friends and family that drive on these county roads. Having a fatal crash nearly every week is extremely scary. This one traffic enforcement position will not eliminate the traffic fatalities, but it is a good start to restoring the enforcement, and it's a good start in reducing our fatal crash numbers in this county. At this time, I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Lieutenant. That is breathtaking. Chief?
I would just like to say, I think we all know, just driving around, that the aggressive driving has gotten pretty much out of hand around here. And during the days when the traffic team was around, Lane County was actually known as the place that you needed to slow down and drive safely, and that is just no longer the case anymore. Our enhancements that we've been able to make in patrol has really done nothing for traffic safety, because still our deputies have almost no unallocated or time for proactive patrols. They're still going from call to call to call to call, and when there is none of that unallocated time to respond or to address those aggressive driving behaviors, then we don't have the ability to write those citations or educate the public. So this position would be a dedicated traffic enforcement person who would not be a call-based deputy. So their primary responsibility would be to hit and target those county roadways where we've had the high traffic fatality rates. So this is a good first step, and we're hoping that the board would allow us to seek this funding. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief Wilkerson. Any further comments from the panel? And I'll look to the board for discussion. And can you pop back to 2 slides as we go into this discussion? And that is this shocking slide right here. So to the board, Vice Chair, you're deferring to Commissioner Buck. Commissioner Buck?
Thank you, Chair. I've had discussions with residents in my district that remember the days in which there was a full traffic patrol, and they've been longing for it. And we know that we just haven't had the resources recently. So I'm thrilled to be able to see this come to the board, knowing that it is only for 3 years. It may not appease everybody, but as you said, it's a great start. And we need to start somewhere. And knowing that London Road, a safety corridor at the moment, just had a fatality on it, even with extra precautions set on that road for that exact reason, it's just devastating to the community. These are friends and families that are affected by deaths on our roadway every year. And we can't not do this. Thank you for taking the time, writing the grant, and ensuring that there's at least an option for us in the next 3 years. And if there's any way in which I can assist in any manner in trying to find a route to a more permanent financial solution, please feel free to call me. I'll do whatever I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm also fully supportive of us applying for this grant. I have one question and one sort of combo comment question. The simple question is, what is the notification, the timeline once we apply? It says that funding would start in January, so when seems like a blissfully and unusually quick turnaround between application and implementation. When will we know if we receive the grant, if we apply?
I actually don't have that information.
Sergeant, you can step forward to the mic, please.
And as you're doing that, I ask because I know what a challenge hiring has been and onboarding and so on. So whether we're going to be able to meet that January implementation is my concern, not any hindrance to approving, just flagging.
I'm Sergeant Worth, Lane County Sheriff's Office. I usually work with ODOT with requesting these grants. Their grant year is October 1. Usually when you have to apply for these grants, it's July 1 or June 1, I believe. But ODOT has put a placeholder in for this county, knowing that this is going to be coming to them. As soon as today's over, my intent is to send this grant request straight to ODOT. They have to get approval from NHTSA, and there's still no guarantee that they're going to say, okay, we'll do this full thing. They may come back and say, well, we'll do this much. So there's still no guarantee on this. So we'll have to go from there. And as far as the January 1 deadline, I don't know. It's going to be working with Ryan Stone at ODOT to try to push this forward as fast as we can.
Great, thank you. My other comment / question is, I know Planner Taylor's been before us before about opportunities for funding for engineering. I mean, by the time someone is behind the wheel and intoxicated or under the influence, they're already at risk, as are others. So the more we can do to change the built environment, because that's much longer term, and you know, one patrol officer for the entire county isn't gonna cover everything. So I'm always and also very much in support and anxious to hear other applications we're putting in for engineering fixes and changes that help just keep everybody a little bit slowed down and safer. But you used the words public health crisis, and I agree. And so that makes me think this is more sort of a pin in it, and also for our county administrator to consider talking with Director Gray at Health and Human Services to kind of circle back and connect the dots for us around what kind of funding and capacity and resource we have on the enforcement side when it comes to monitoring sale of alcohol to minors, because you mentioned minors being particularly impacted, the sort of social hosting, responsible hosting laws, all these other factors that are way further upstream that we're under-resourced in, that puts so many people behind the wheel under the influence. So as much as we can, I'm always going to want us to try to connect those dots and see where we're investing as far upstream as possible. Because by the time someone, as I said, is behind the wheel, under the influence, even with an enforcement officer dedicated who may stop them, there were so many opportunities before that, many of which are in our jurisdiction if we had adequate resources to prevent that from happening. So I'm really just flagging that and sort of making a request to consider when we get reports back from public health and our prevention team in particular, what we're doing and are there opportunities we want this board to support to secure more funding to increase the resources to reduce the number of people who are even driving intoxicated and minors consuming alcohol and other altering substances. Thank you.
Chair
Thank you, Vice Chair, for those brilliant points regarding upstream intervention.
Chair Farr, if I may
Please,
respond.
Ms.
Thank
Taylor.
you so much, Commissioner Trieger, and that's a big reason why I felt it was important to be part of this panel today. Lane County is working across many departments to bring as many tools to this problem. And just wanted to point out that when we publicize that we have enforcement that alone is a deterrent. And that's really our goal, is to deter these behaviors, not to catch people doing bad things. And so people know that there's no consequence, and so that's why they're choosing to take this risk and put other people's lives in danger. So I feel like this is a really important element that we haven't been able to use in our toolkit. So thank you so much for all of your support.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. And thank you. You continually bring engineering advances. For instance, I always think about Hunsaker Lane and all the things that we've done there to make it a safer environment, which used to be a fatal environment. Still is, but further commissioner response. Commissioner Seneca, followed by Commissioner Lovall.
Yeah, thanks for all the hard work, guys. Of course, you know, I'm going to be supportive. One thing that really struck home was the county roads with the most serious and fatal crashes. How many of those roads I'm surrounded by that I know my family drives on. So, yeah, this is needed, and I appreciate all the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lovall.
Thank you, Chair. Sheriff's Department's my favorite department. Got to tell you, thank you very much. I had a great ride a couple weeks ago with Deputy Dobbs, and presence, like Lieutenant says, is everything. The announcement that we're going to have the presence in the community is everything. We were parked in Vida for a couple hours. Amazing how many people obeyed the speed law through Vida when I've caught myself many times not releasing my foot in time going through there. So I'm excited to support this, and I'm excited that we can add another deputy to our corps, because as we know, if stuff hits the fan, that's another deputy on the street that can aid those people that are already out there risking their lives. So I'm in full support of this. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Lovall. You know, I used to drive into Yachats, and the Yachats City Police, I don't even know if they have a department, but they had a police car. I know that because they'd always park it on the south city limit. And even though I knew there was nobody in it, I would always, it just reminded me to slow down. So further comment, I've got a couple of personal comments, but I'm going to repeat the staff analysis, which really covers it in far more detail than I possibly could. Far too many fatal crashes occur in Lane County. Improving traffic safety requires education, engineering, and enforcement, as you stated. Due to lack of public safety resources, the Sheriff's Office doesn't have a single designated traffic safety deputy, not even one. LCSO wishes to apply for an ODOT grant to fund a dedicated traffic safety deputy who will arrest DUI drivers and enforce other traffic violations in an effort to reduce fatal crashes. Your point that the DUIs that have been issued are usually post-accident, post-event. And, you know, the fact that let me get this straight. This funds one. This would fund one single deputy who would cover a county the size of, what state again? Connecticut, right? All the way from the top of the Three Sisters all the way to Hasita Head Lighthouse is Lane County. So we're funding one. It's shameful that we're having to go cap in hand to fund a single traffic enforcement deputy. When we look at these numbers right here, now can you go forward 2 slides very quickly? DUI citations in 2008, it was 554. In 2022, it was 178. I suppose that many people have quit drinking and driving, right? No, we don't think that's the case, do we? So we think there's a big gap right there that really is occurring, and you catch them, it comes to our attention post-accident. This is only a tiny little grain of sand in the effort that we need to enforce traffic laws in Lane County, to make the highways safer. Now, I drive 126 quite a bit. 126 is a state highway, and I rarely, if ever, see a state trooper on that highway. It's a rare occasion. Yesterday, I drove from Florence to Eugene on 126, and I think it's called Badger Mountain, the windy passing lane coming to the east. Has some 35-mile-an-hour corners. So I tow a trailer quite often when I'm coming back, and I slow down very, very slowly so anybody who wants to pass me can, because sometimes there's a buildup behind me, and they do. Now, a few years ago, we shortened the traffic, the passing lane on Badger Mountain, took off one of the curves of it, but people don't respond to that. Once the the passing lane is gone, people continue to pass, and that did to me yesterday. So really, if there had been a traffic enforcement, either just someplace in the vicinity, just a presence in the vicinity, whether it be a state trooper or a sheriff's deputy, it would really do, as you say, Ms. Taylor, it would just plant in people's minds that enforcement is there. Having a single deputy is like having a single waymaster. You know, might happen. You know, chances are it won't happen. It might happen. That is a certain deterrent. But then you double that, you triple that, you quadruple that, or you get up to the numbers that we need, and all of a sudden we have a much safer place to drive, a much less fatal place to drive. Go back those 2 slides again. I want this to really sink in, that 51 people died last year, and 3 people in the last 2 weeks, one on London Road, 2 on Highway 126, in the last couple of weeks, due to missing turns, speeding, whatever it may be, whatever the cause. If we had greater presence of either brown shirts or blue shirts, whoever it may be, then people would drive more slowly. So this is a step, a grain of sand in the right direction. Anything else from the panel? In which case, I will ask for a motion. Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of Order 23-07-18-11 in the matter of submitting an application to the Oregon Department of Transportation in the amount of $411,433 for a 3-year traffic enforcement grant and delegating authority to the county administrator to sign the application and execute the contracts if awarded.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. We have Order 23-07-18-11. Discussion to the motion. The Vice Chair Trieger, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. If we increase enforcement, then in theory, that means we're increasing the ability to collect fines for that. Is there any discussion, I don't know that it's part of the grant, but in the department, any discussion of what happens to revenue from increased collection of fines?
Well, frankly, Commissioner, the revenue, so to speak, that we get from citations is just not very much anymore because we don't have the justice courts here anymore. We send most of our citations through circuit court, and anything associated with a DUI is going to go through circuit court, and that amount of revenue is not going to be significant, even with a full-time traffic safety officer.
So just another sort of putting a pin in it, if there becomes an opportunity for us to consider a way to build a mechanism in where with increased enforcement, should we see increased collection of fines, we have an opportunity to consider where to designate that revenue source. That would be a great thing to hear back. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. And once again, this is an application, so is there anything the Board of Commissioners, if there is anything the Board of Commissioners or others could do to support the grant application, I'm certain Mr. Mokrahysky or Chief Wilkerson or Lynn Glessner, you would forward that information to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you very much. Further discussion to the motion? I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. (51, 30, 16). Okay, then we'll move along to item 9A, which is County Council. And the County Council, Ms. Pettigrew, welcome to Harris Hall. We've seen you in the room all morning, but now you're here before us. Good day.
Thank you, Vice Chair, Commissioners. I have no announcements to share with the board today.
No announcements. Okay, any questions or comments for council? I see none. Then we'll move along to item 10A, County Administration, Order 2307-1812, in the matter of setting a public hearing for housing and community needs. The public hearing is to be set August 1st, 2023. Do I have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Mokrahysky, I'll ask you to introduce your panel, please.
Thank you, Chair. Steve Adams, our Policy Director for Lane County, is here to walk you through this item. After he gets his presentation up.
Indeed, Chair Farr, Commissioners, good morning. Here we are. Okay, there we are. So sorry for the delay. Thank you, County Administrator Mokrahysky. Chair Farr, Commissioners, good morning. I am Steve Adams, the Director of Policy for the County of Lane. Joining me is my colleague, Kristen Wee. Kristen Wee has joined the policy team within the last 6 months. She is filling the position of our climate change lead strategist. So we reclassified that position, as you know, reconfigured the position to focus a great deal more on grant seeking and grant management from federal sources, given the large amount of federal funds that are out there for the full suite of opportunities. Kristen joins us, Ms. Lee joins us with 2.5 decades worth of federal housing experience from the Bay Area at both the city and county level, and has been incredibly helpful to us in thinking through the community development block grant process that we have discussed in prior housing updates for the board. So in previous meetings of the board, we have advised you that we had identified the community development block grant as a critical component of our broader affordable housing strategy. This is a particular funding source that county government has not utilized in over a decade now to advance various activities related to a wide range of uses that community development block grants can be used for, including housing support. So with that, we have this item, Chair Farr, and the subsequent item on the agenda are interrelated to us preparing for our first community development block grant, which we hope to submit this fall. All right, so with that, I will turn it over to my colleague.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
So there are 2 items on your agenda that we wanted to kind of discuss together, since they are related. The first is, in order, is to set a public hearing for August 1st. And the second one is to adopt a fair housing resolution. And so the fair housing resolution is required for us to be able to apply for the community development block grant funding through the state of Oregon. And we recommend adoption not only for that reason, because it will bring more money into the county, is our hope, but also it helps to further our affordable housing action plan goals and the strategic plan goals. The Fair Housing Resolution includes language that declares that discrimination in housing sales, rentals, leases, and financing is prohibited by federal law. And the format of the Fair Housing Resolution is prescribed by the CDBG program. And it states that Lane County supports this law and will assist anyone who feels like they've been discriminated against to follow the procedures that are to go through the state or the feds to complain. And so it also declares that Lane County encourages government-assisted housing as a source of housing for lower-income residents, and requires Lane County to publicize these statements, posters, flyers, pamphlets, media, community outlets. So it's really a public statement about our commitment to fair housing. It will also further our strategic plan goals by supporting stewardship of resources, by potentially bringing in additional funding for housing, supports equity by preserving housing for folks who have low incomes, and also supports the Regional Housing Rehabilitation Program, which promotes the preservation of naturally occurring housing. And we'll talk more about that, hopefully, at your next meeting in more detail. So also, the other item is setting a public hearing. So to apply for CDBG, it is required to have a public hearing, which we would like to have on August 1st at 1:30 p.m. It's an opportunity for members of the public to share their views with you all on community development and housing needs. And it's also an opportunity to hear from the public about other projects they might feel should be supported by CDBG funds. It also supports the strategic plan goals of collective impact, hearing from our community directly on what they think the money should be used for. And then also housing preservation, again, preserving housing that is naturally occurring for low-income people. So, so in summary, the next steps that we hope you would take are adopting this fair housing resolution today, setting the public hearing for August 1st, and then allowing us to apply for CDBG funds by September 1st. So that concludes my remarks. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. I'll look to the board for questions or comments for Mr. Adams or Ms. Lee. Vice Chair Trieger?
Thank you, Chair.
I just wanted to mention, out of abundance of caution, our materials do mention that the Regional Housing Rehabilitation Loan Program is through St. Vincent de Paul, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm related to the Executive Director of St. Vincent de Paul, but in this particular instance, I do not believe it's an actual conflict of interest, so I'll continue to participate in the conversation and at the hearing in the future. Have we applied for this in the past? Because I haven't seen something like this come to the board before. And if not, can you, or if yes, even, can you give us a little bit of history of our participation and how you see maybe this play out in the future?
Chair Farr, Commissioner Buck, to my knowledge, we have not applied for a CDBG grant since circa 2012, perhaps 2014, and I would look to others who have longer time and tenure with county government that can help me remember. This was used and has historically been administered through our Community and Economic Development Program, as I understand it. There's a Business Oregon is the administrative agency for this. This particular program that has been identified in consultation with smaller jurisdictions around Wayne County, I think I understand that Wayne County did at one time administer this, perhaps perhaps 20 years ago, and when this was initially formed. We took a hiatus from administering the Community Development Block Grant after some administrative challenges that we had in managing the program, and we set it off to the side. For the last several years, this particular program that has been identified, this is the Regional Housing Rehabilitation Loan Program of Wayne County, has been rotating amongst many of the municipalities, the smaller municipalities. So in so doing, it has focused in different geographic locations around the county. So as we consulted with the smaller municipalities about our desire to kind of reestablish our CDBG program within county government, this was identified as an opportunity for us to have a turn, as it were, in the rotation. It's important to note that at any one time, a jurisdiction can have 3 open CDBG projects, and you have to close, one of those before you could take on a new one if you're at the full billet of 3. So by county government taking on this, it frees up our cities to be able to pursue other CDBG projects that they themselves would do. So this isn't a competitive process, we're actually doing a favor. So the project that's been identified is a $500,000 ask of Business Oregon in the fall. And this goes to the housing preservation effort of making repairs to limited income seniors. Essentially, it pays for the repairs. They remain in the household throughout the entirety of their remaining years. And the loan is not collected until there's a property transfer, in which time those resources come back into the loan fund. So when we ask for $500,000, that means that we'll be able to take care of 19 new households is the projection going forward. And this will be geographically focused for the West Fir Oak Ridge area, as that's kind of up now in the queue for rotation.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Further questions? Then thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you. A little clarification, if you can, or expansion on what constitutes a home repair. So particularly when you talk about that community and what they've experienced in terms of smoke inundation and with the excessive heat we're experiencing, would that include things like installing ductless units so they have better air quality and cooling? Or does it, what's the criteria for a home repair or rehabilitation?
Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, I don't know the answer to that question. Perhaps my colleague, Ms. Lee, does.
Yeah, at this point in time, it's really focused on health and safety repairs. However, there is a new program the state of Oregon has that I was hoping and talking to St. Vincent de Paul about trying to access, which may be used to be able to do those types of repairs. And so it's, my hope that we could start to layer other funding sources on top of this program. I actually administered funding, CDBG funding for this program in the city of Berkeley. And so I have a long history of knowing the CDBG requirements, and it was one of the most beloved programs that we had in Berkeley, because you're really accessing, you're helping people who otherwise wouldn't be able to do these kind of health and safety repairs to help them remain in their homes. So my goal is to layer some of our climate action goals on top of this program to make it even more robust.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Further comments, questions? Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't, forgive me, I didn't notice anything in the packet that about a selection process. How do those 19 people get selected at an average of about $26,000 a pop? I'm just kind of curious.
That's a good question. We are going to go a little bit deeper into this if you choose to set that public hearing and allow us to come back on August 1st, and we will have St. Vincent de Paul there. It's my understanding that people will apply and get in a queue, and that you are required to kind of go through the queue in the order that they've applied to the program. Then I guess the question is outreach. How do we really outreach to make sure that people are understanding that the program exists? So I can come back to you with more, with a better answer to that question, either in between or at the next meeting.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell, and thank you for that response. For the commission, from the commission?
I was just
Seneca,
going
go
to
ahead.
reiterate, that was my question as well, is what is that process to go along with what Commissioner Trieger said, air conditioners and that kind of stuff? Is that all encompassing in that stuff? That would be some great info.
Thank you. And, I'm really pleased that we're moving forward with this, using the county's strength to help the smaller communities to really move forward with some things that really can be a little bit troublesome to navigate for communities with smaller resources. When I became a commissioner in 2012, I'd been, in 10 of the previous 18 years, I've been a Eugene City Councilor. And the Eugene City Council uses CDBG extensively and effectively. And I questioned why we didn't use CDBG at the county. And you'd mentioned administrative, difficulties. I heard of some of the administrative difficulties. We don't need to go into details about what caused that, but the fact is, here we are back again, and I'm really excited to have you up here from the Bay Area because I see wonderful things going on down there. I visit my son in San Francisco frequently, and the way that the government helps housing move forward, not just in the city, which that's what they call it down there, but outside of the city in Berkeley and other places around, it's pretty effective how federal money is used to bolster local efforts. So bravo, good to have you on board, Ms. Lee. Thank you very much for being here. And Mr. Adams, thank you very much. Anything else from the commission? Vice Chair Trieger.
Move approval of Order 23-07-18-12 in the matter of setting a public hearing for housing and community needs. Public hearing to be August 1st, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. time certain.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. We have Order 23-07-18-12. Discussion to the motion. I'm seeing none. I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. See you on August 1st. I bet you we'll see you before then.
See you in half a minute.
One more.
We do. No, I'm talking to these folks too.
Yes.
Oh, then I'll see you in a few moments. Thank you very much. We'll move along to Order and Resolution 23-07-18-13 in the matter of adopting a fair housing resolution with the same panel. Thank you very much.
Chair, if there's nothing for the panel to add, I'm happy to make the motion.
Vice Chair Trieger.
Move to adopt a fair housing resolution to be able to compete for the Community Development Block Grant, or CDBG, funding through the state of Oregon. Sorry, that's Order and Resolution 23-07-18-13 in the matter of adopting a fair housing resolution.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Discussion to the motion. Now, before I say farewell, you're not going to stick around after this, are you? Okay, very good. Then I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Bye-bye. Thanks. See you August 1st or before. Ms. Mokrajewski will now move to item 10C on the agenda, which is Order 23-07-18-01, in a matter of appointing one at-large member to fill a Charter Review Committee vacancy And today we do have Jenna Cusimano, who is our management analyst, and we'll welcome back Chair Morgan Monroe. Ms. Mokrajski.
Thank you, Chair. We've introduced our guests here, so I think I don't know, Jen, are you going to take it, or Morgan? Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair Farr, Vice Chair Trieger, Commissioners. As noted, we were here last week before you providing an update on the Charter Review Committee's work. At that update meeting, we also noted that we had recently received a resignation of one of our Charter Review Committee members. We're here before you today requesting that you fill that vacancy by appointing a new member of the Charter Review Committee. So there were five commissioner-appointed members of the Charter Review Committee, and those committee members met on November 2nd, 2022, to discuss nominating 2 further committee members who would serve as at-large committee members to the Charter Review Committee. During that November 2nd meeting, the 5 commissioner-appointed members discussed all of the candidates for that remaining applications from that initial recruitment pool. We had received 12 applications. 5 had been commissioner appointed, which left 7 applications for consideration by the committee. During that discussion, they ultimately circled around 3 top contenders to fill those remaining 2 slots: Sarai Johnson, Sean Shivers, and Kevin Cronin. Ultimately, the committee nominated Sarai Johnson and Kevin Cronin to fill the 2 at-large positions, and they were appointed by the board as a whole on December 6, 2022. Last Monday, on July 10th, at-large committee member Kevin Cronin submitted his resignation. Per committee bylaws, vacancies may occur because of death, illness, resignation, or other reasons. When such a situation occurs, the committee shall notify the county administrator, who will then request that the Board of County Commissioners declare a vacancy and appoint a replacement. At last week's meeting, you determined that the committee should go ahead and move forward with the process to get that vacancy filled. We had a Charter Review Committee meeting previously scheduled for last Thursday, July 13th. At that meeting, the committee members opted to have the Board of County Commissioners go ahead and fill the vacancy at their next board meeting, which is today, by appointing a member from the outstanding applicants from the initial recruitment. There were 5 outstanding applications from that prior recruitment. Staff went ahead and reached out to those applicants to see about their current interest and availability in filling out the term for that committee term. Of those applicants, Dean Lively-Brook, Jeremy Scherer, and Sean Shivers all expressed their current interest and ongoing availability to fill out the remainder of the Charter Review Committee term. Paul Metzler indicated that he would not be able to serve on the Charter Review Committee, and I was not able to receive a response from Andrew Collick either way. Also at their July 13th meeting, the Charter Review Committee members present affirmed their support for Sean Shivers failing the vacant position based on their previous discussion at the November 2nd. However, they did not have a formal vote and wanted to go ahead and leave the decision up to all of you to figure out who you would like to appoint to that vacant position. So within the board packet you have before you today those 5 applications for the potential candidates to fill the vacancy. Chairman Rowe, did you want to add anything?
Thank you. Then just, you've mentioned the names of everybody except the 5 appointed members. Can you name the 5 appointed members and which commissioner appointed each one?
I can. Ben Clark was appointed by Commissioner Farr. Steve Kornakia, appointed by Commissioner Bozovich. Jenny Jonak, appointed by Commissioner Buck. Morgan Monroe, appointed by Commissioner Trieger. And Stefan Ostrek, appointed by Commissioner Burney.
Very good. Thank you very much. Okay, discussion to the item. Commissioner Seneca, do you have a discussion or just waiting for?
Well, kind of. How do we, out of the participants, how do we vote for which one?
Then
what's this process?
I'll just restate that the existing 5 members have suggested that the 3rd applicant, from the 3 who were considered as the final 3 applicants for the appointed positions by the Charter Review Committee, Jeremy Shivers.
Sean Shivers.
Sean Shivers, excuse me. is the recommendation by the majority of the committee. However, it is up to the Board of County Commissioners to make a decision, and we have before us, I believe, is 3 names to select from, which is Sean Shivers, and can you say the other 2 again?
Dean Livelybrook, Jeremy Scherer, and Sean Shivers.
All right, and, okay, very good. So that's just a recap of what the consideration we have before us. So with that, we can have a discussion, or we can make a motion. Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. As I said before in today's meeting, the winner is who shows up. And I think the passion that Jeremy Scherer showed today by showing up, and also what his resume of application said. He said the structure of a county not only impacts the community's culture, but the community's culture impacts the form of the county's character. Home rule is a departure from county court or general laws county because it creates a framework of laws that gives authority to plan for the future needs of its people with flexibility to provide adequate community services. To me, he has a very grasped understanding of what the Charter Review Committee is all about, and he's passionate enough to show up today on a board selection day to give public comment for his hat in the ring. So I'd like to make a motion that we recommend Jeremy Scherer to fulfill that at-large position for the Charter Review Committee.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Lovell and seconded by Commissioner Seneca. Jeremy Scherer as the applicant for consideration for the remaining position on the Charter Review Committee. Discussion to the motion. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I'm just clarifying, he is one of the original applicants, right?
Correct.
Right. Although I generally would go with whatever the committee recommends, it sounds like they were pretty much up in the air at that, or they didn't vote in particular for any one person.
They were not able to have a formal vote based on the agenda for the meeting didn't provide enough notice.
Oh.
So the 4 of the 5 commissioner-appointed members who were present at the meeting affirmed their support for their original selection of Sean Shivers as the alternate candidate back in November.
I see.
But it was not a formal vote, you are correct.
But that was specific because it's such a short time frame and notice. Okay.
And also based on the remaining time frame in the committee, just for expediency purposes, we wanted to go ahead and move it forward with whoever the board felt should fill the position.
All right. Well, I would generally go with whatever the committee has recommended in this case, but I'm still contemplating. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner. Vice Chair Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate the presentation. I did reread through the bylaws, which we adopted as a board previously as part of the process of setting the Charter Review Committee up, and we have put a process in place that is actually beyond this current. This is going to be used every 10 years, and noted that the bylaws say that when there is a vacancy, it's actually for the board to appoint. And so I went back and read some past minutes, read through the applications, and as one of the commissioners who was here at the time we set this process up, it was very important to all 5 commissioners that we both have a hand in selecting, but also turn some of that over to the committee members, that we show the public that we have trust and faith and want the engagement and involvement and responsibility and accountability of matters such as charter review items to live in the hands of the constituents. And that's why we had the 2 seats to be appointed by their peers as constituent members. And given that there were 2 committee appointments to be made and 3 folks rose to the top, and now there is 1 remaining of those 3 who is still available, willing to serve, was the will of the constituents of the committee members, and also has a long and impressive history of public service and serving on public bodies and showing up. I'm very supportive of Sean Shivers being appointed. I'm also recognizing that's a very short timeline. There's really only a couple more meetings before recommendations. So whoever is appointed is going to have a lot of catching up to do. And I thank in advance the committee members for their grace and support of that new member to help them get up to speed and be a full participant. And of course, ultimately, anything that this committee recommends comes back to this board. And so another reason I think it's important to sort of share back to the committee and give them more agency over who they see being the best person to fill that seat. So I will defer my support to the committee's recommendation. It's unfortunate, but fully within process, that we have a motion on the table rather than the ability to have this conversation first as a board before. I purposely withheld making a motion, hoping that there would be a little more conversation here before doing that. Should the motion on the table be withdrawn or be put to a vote and fail, I would be prepared to put forward a motion supporting the interest and will of the committee in having Sean Shivers fill that vacancy. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Further discussion? Okay.
Chair.
Commissioner Lovell?
Thank you, Chair. I echo the sentiments of Vice Chair of trying to get someone up to speed, and I'd like to remind for the public record Jeremy's testimony this morning about how he has listened to all the minutes, kept track of all the meetings, has kept pace with everything going on, and showed up to say that he's informed. So I think as far as the suggestions of getting someone up to speed, I think we have someone up to speed, and that person was up to speed enough to come and show up and say that they're up to speed. So I would still like to recommend Jeremy Scheer.
Thank you, Commissioner. So I have a couple of questions. The three originally were selected as the three finalists, of which two were chosen. How much deliberation went into that discussion, selecting the final three? Do you recall, Chair Monroe?
I think that it covered 2 full meetings of the 5 commissioner-selected committee members. We went over every application. And I apologize if my memory of last November is incorrect. But I'm pretty sure it was a good 2 full meetings. We looked at all the applications, we talked through everything. We had a couple of different rounds of voting as different names went through. It was a pretty robust process when we looked to put forward our recommendations for those at-large members.
Okay.
Jenna?
So I actually do have the meeting minutes from our November 2nd meeting. It was actually just one meeting, which may have felt like a lot longer. But it was just the one meeting of the 5 commissioner-appointed members. And during that meeting, their sole purpose was really to identify which applicants they wanted to move forward for nomination to the Board of County Commissioners. So it was about a 45-minute meeting. There was a lot of deliberation about what type of qualities they wanted to have on the committee. There was a lot of discussion about diversity, making sure there was adequate representation from different viewpoints and different parts of the county. And so ultimately, based on that discussion, those 3 names, Sarai Johnson, Sean Shivers, and Kevin Cronin, rose to the top. There was further discussion based on those 3 candidates as to who the committee members thought could best flesh out the currently existing 5 commissioner-appointed members, and that's how they ultimately came to consensus on Sarai Johnson and Kevin Cronin.
And by consensus, you mean full 100% support of the 2?
Correct.
Very good. Out of 3. Okay, good. Then, we do have the opportunity as Board of Commissioners to make the final decision on many things. And sometimes, even if it's a formal recommendation from a committee, we disregard it and either reopen the applications or go with a different choice. So that's what we have before us today is you're kind of recommending. I mean, there was no vote on it for this recommendation. It's just kind of a recommendation. But we have a motion before us. So at this point, then, we'll move forward with any further discussion. We have Commissioner Seneca, then Vice Chair Trieger.
Well, I'd just like to state that there are 2 commissioners that don't have an appointed member there. So I think that should have some weight to it. I mean, we didn't have say in previous votes. So.
Good point. Vice Chair Trigger?
Thank you, Chair. Just because when you mentioned diversity and range of opinion, I remember when we had the presentation most recently on the survey results, and there was comment about the age range of respondents. And so just noting, we also have an opportunity here to bring some real age, generational diversity to this committee. And I imagine that was one of the reasons that those 3 rows, I don't want to presuppose, but I imagine that was at least a factor in the committee's discussion about the 2 seats that the committee got to appoint, was that was an opportunity to provide some generational diversity, because the 3 that you mentioned all represent a younger generation than many of the other applicants and most of the current members of the committee. My functional question is, what happens if we don't appoint? Again, there's only, 3 more meetings before you bring your recommendations back to us? Or I guess you're adding a
We
second.
have 5 more Charter Review Committee meetings.
So you're meeting more than once a month right now?
We're meeting twice a month. We do still have 6 of the 7 members. However, we wanted to give you the opportunity, and especially if we were to have someone who would be able to engage more fully in the work as we're putting together the report for you all to review in October, I'm sure the committee members would definitely appreciate having an additional body to help provide some support on that.
Which I don't recall from my review of the bylaws, if there's a vacancy, then you're just meeting a person down. If we
still have
don't
a
come to a
quorum.
resolution. Right, great.
Without-
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Okay, thanks. I know that in employment law, age is a protected class, so it's not something you consider when making appointments. So that is in employment law. So, then we have a motion before us. Any further discussion? So if there is no applicant selected, we'll move forward with 6.
Correct.
And the 6 have had ongoing conversation. We would presume that the 7th member would either have to go back and read the minutes if they've not already done that, or they'd need some time to catch up, or the discussion that they have would be somewhat uninformed as compared to the rest of the board. Is that a fair assumption?
We do have some materials that would be able to provide some summaries of the information and topics that the committee has reviewed to date, and the various staff presentations that the committee has received. So there are some summaries of the materials that could get them up to date a bit quicker. And generally, it has been still more of a discussion phase. So I don't think it's a point at which someone who has been outside of the realm of the work would not be able to participate and provide their input as well. I think there's still opportunity for that.
Excellent. Okay, very good. Then we have before us a vote, a motion. I'll call for the vote. And can you repeat the motion, Commissioner Lovell?
Yes, sir, thank you. I'd like to recommend Jeremy Scher for the position of the at-large for the Charter Review Committee.
And that is seconded by Commissioner Senega.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Passes 3-2 with Commissioners Buck and Vice Chair Trieger in opposition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Very good. Then this concludes our morning's business, other than Mr. Mokrahysky. Announcements.
Thanks, Chair. I just have a brief announcement for you. I've shared with each of the commissioners individually work that I and members of my team have been involved with over the last several months to look at some reorganization and restructuring of some of the county administrator's duty, the county leadership and management of our county administration office, as well as of our executive team, the executive team that reports to the county administrator. So again, I've shared this with commissioners individually, but I also wanted to share with you as a group an update in this forum on how that is taking shape. So we have reorganized, and I think really importantly, what I've sought to do is make these changes without creating any additional positions, any new positions, given the financial challenges and scarcity of resources that we have. So try to accomplish the goal of creating a better, more defined structure for leadership in our organization, particularly under the county administrator's duties, without adding a lot new. So we have restructured the duties of one of our department directors and created the role of an assistant county administrator Mr. Rickoff is serving in that role and will take on some additional duties in overseeing some of the departments that have historically been the responsibility of the county administrator directly, as well as continuing to serve as the Department Director of Community Justice and Rehabilitation Services. Mr. Rickoff, in that role as the Assistant County Administrator, will also continue to serve as my backup in my absence and serve as a resource directly for the commissioners. And then secondarily, we have repurposed the role and duties of our Strategy and Integration Manager to be the Chief of Staff within County Administration. And so Judy Williams, who has served in that role, will now serve as our Chief of Staff, overseeing the day-to-day operations within County Administration. And so I just wanted to share that with commissioners in this forum, and really pleased to welcome both of those individuals into those new roles and to provide additional support both for me and for our broader organization. So that's all I have, Chair, unless you have questions for me.
I have no questions. Any questions from Ms. Markowski? Commissioner Seneca.
Yeah, I would just like to say congrats, Judy. I'm excited to hear this, a huge fan. And take a second, Steve, to say you have done a great job at surrounding yourself with amazing staff, top to bottom. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Commissioner. And I agree.
Then we do agree. Further comments? Then, Ms. Markowski, under your announcements, I'm going to talk about Robert's Rules of Order for a moment, and that is the prevailing side in a motion. Members of the prevailing side in Robert's Rules of Order, which we do follow loosely, the member of the prevailing side at the very next meeting or during the same meeting can make a motion to reconsider a motion that has passed. That's something that we have seen here at the Board of County Commissioners. It's rare. It's not something that does happen very often. So you're aware of that, Ms. Markowski? The motion to reconsider. And the procedure on that is that if there is a motion to reconsider, it does not require a second. At that point, the board will reconsider whether or not to reopen the discussion on the item that had the agenda item that had passed, either in the previous meeting or in the existent meeting. If there's a majority that is in favor of reconsidering, then the item is reopened for discussion, and the vote will be retaken under Robert's Rules of Order, which we do follow loosely, and we do have a precedent in the motion to reconsider. So that's all fairly, everybody understands the motion to reconsider and how that works. Okay, good. Then we'll move down our agenda to Commissioner Business announcements. Commissioner Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I've got three, so bear with me. It may take a little time here. Firstly, I read a quote this week that really struck me. It said that we cannot solve problems by using the same level of thinking we used when we created them. Albert Einstein said that. And so in light of that, I have a couple of things I would like to have us look at. Firstly, I'd like to direct staff to follow up on the paused Lane Event Center master plan by gathering the last bits of information uncovered by the hired consultant that was put on pause, and present all of the up-to-date findings that we have to the board for review and future decision-making.
Chair, point of order.
I think the point of order may be that we're on announcements and not future board requests, which we do often morph.
My apologies, sorry. I thought we were on business.
Thank you.
Well, we kind of morph these often.
You should have gavelled me, Chair.
You know, I really restrictively use this gavel for anything other than action. So
All right, my apologies.
let's come back to that.
Thank you.
Give us a chance to think about it as we go through announcements. Any further announcements? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I'll just note that the Lane County Fair starts tomorrow, so get your tickets, get a corn dog, look at some quilts, ride some rides, maybe not in that order, maybe eat your corn dog after the rides. But please enjoy yourself and enjoy the Lane County Fair, and I'm really glad we're looking at temps in the 80s instead of 90s and over 100 for the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey ho, come to the fair.
Isn't today the last day you can get that unlimited ride bracelet online?
Oh boy, I don't know about that.
Yeah, so the hot dog can definitely wait.
Got to get those early.
We really do.
Yeah.
I think that is true.
And I will just note, pardon me, just safety concern, we do have a clear bag policy now for Lane County Fair. So if you want to bring more than you can fit in your pockets, make sure you bring it in a clear bag, and we have branded clear bags for sale at the fair administrative offices. Thank you.
Do you happen to know the talent that's going to be performing?
I do, and it is online
Yeah,
on the
that's-
fair website for all to see and buy their tickets.
And it's a pretty wonderful array of talent, which I will not go into the very deep details of, which I know in complete, no, I don't. But I've heard it's a good array of talent. Further announcements? Commissioner Seneca.
Also, that means 4-H is in town, so swing by and see all the animals. Those kids work hard for that stuff.
Thank you for that.
Further announcements? Then future board assignment requests. Commissioner Lovell, I think.
Deja
you
vu, I'm
received, notes of this.
Deja vu. So anyway, I'd like to just re-announce the direct staff to follow up on the Paz Lane Event Center master plan by gathering the last bits of information uncovered by the hired consultant, and to present any up-to-date findings to the board for review and possible future decision-making.
Okay, we'll be looking for head nods on that. I have a question. Any question, discussion? Excuse me, Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, I just want some clarification on what that means exactly. So the way that it was worded, you want to unpause it or pause it?
I want to just catch up on the information. There's been some.
Oh, I see.
Some tension and some emails that have said there's some findings that haven't been released to the public yet, and there's some things that we should restart and reconsider. I think it's just been put on pause, and we need to put it back on track.
Just an update on the master plan for the fairgrounds.
Yeah, and any information that we have that has been started that was not put forth by the consultant we hired, yeah.
I don't have any issue with that.
Okay, nor do I. Ms. Booker, I just asked, what does that mean to you? What would happen if you get the head nods on this?
We could do that, certainly. Just kind of a brief update on, as part of the various conversations we've had related to the Lane Event Center, future development planning, capital improvement investments. We did start to do some of that master plan work. So some of that, and we pressed pause on the master plan work because the scope of what the consultants were looking at was really limited to the operations of the campus as an event center. And so it didn't really consider the broader, it wasn't looking sort of at the broader questions that have come up by the board about what, the long-term vision. Should this be a sports complex? Should it be an event center with additional, hotel and additional convention space? Should it be developed as something else, right? Those things weren't considered. It was sort of this more narrow view. So we paused it, understanding there was this whole conversation happening around the multi-use facility, and because of the time frame and the need for a decision around that needed to sort of be decided first, and then we could come back to the master plan. So I think if the commissioners would like to hear an update on what was done on the master plan, we certainly can do that. The timing of what I'm not exactly sure is we are planning on to come back to the board August 22nd, I believe, with to seek some direction from the board around the next steps related to the multi-use facility. You had the update a couple weeks ago in the work session that said, hey, couple of scenarios, either we press pause on the multi-use facility or we continue to move forward and do additional design work. And we didn't ask you to tell us which direction you wanted then, but we are going to ask you on the 22nd to say which route do you want to go. So what I'm a little unclear of is, and I'd like to know what the expectation of the board is. If you want to hear anything related to the master plan, do you want to hear that before? And I'm just a little nervous about our ability to come forward with a discussion and an update on the master plan work prior to the 22nd. So
I understand. Thank you for answering my question, Ms. Mokrajewski. I'll think about that. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a thought because I wonder, and if this would satisfy Commissioner Lovall, and if this would be something that would be easier for the administrator to deliver on, is do we just need a sort of status update in memo format? Does it need to be an item that comes before us, or is it really just sort of what you just said, but a little more fleshed out about the status of where the master planning project is, period, full stop, and also where it fits in with other conversations and opportunities and possibilities, just offering that as maybe potentially a way to satisfy getting the information without, in a way that satisfies where we are with the process.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And any further discussion? Commissioner Lovall, a response to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I hate to talk about the elephant in the room, but we should talk about it. I mean, you mentioned the 22nd about the M Stadium. I think that's what you're referring to in short terms. The public has had a huge outcry about the M Stadium. There's a huge gap that we know, $43 million. And I think that knowing all of that and the direction of the fair, perhaps at the same time or simultaneously, would help the board create in their minds a more solid future decision for that property when so much is up in the air right now. I'm not really sure putting one cart before the horse is the order of operation. I just think that we need to bring ourselves back into the table with all of the options on the table and start the hard discussions of what's really important. So I would say anything we can do to move all of those items forward would be something I would support.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. That sounds very different than the original request. So I still want to clarify. I don't mind getting an update on where we are in the master plan at all. That's fine. But if what you're really trying to have a discussion about is an entirely new conversation about what we want to do with the fairgrounds, I'm not there because we are in the middle of a process. We are going to have a meeting on the 22nd. I'd like to give that our full attention, and depending on the outcome of that conversation, then potentially entertain other issues after we've had that meeting.
Thanks, Commissioner. Then, I'll add this, Ms. Morgracie. We have a couple of choices here. August 22nd, we'll have a discussion regarding the proposed multi-use stadium. One way or another, we'll have a decision at that point in time, or we'll have certainly a lot more information than we have today. The master plan, as it's gone forward so far, doesn't have a multi-use stadium in it. The work that's been done so far really is kind of old work on what the old view of the fairgrounds was. But it's a pretty intact body of work, and I think there are two things here. We only have 2 meetings between now and August 22nd. That's the 1st and the 8th. The 1st is pretty well set, and it's kind of a full agenda. We don't have it set yet, but it's a pretty full agenda. So the discussion on the 22nd, I think, would be informed by what's happened on the master plan so far. But I don't know that it needs to be a full discussion, because the meeting on the 22nd will inform us as to what the future of the fairgrounds looks like. So maybe before the 22nd, if we could have a report in hand, and maybe during announcements, we could have a small discussion. Is that what we're gonna suggest anyway?
I mean, if that meets Commissioner Lovall's the intent of his request, I think we certainly can do that. I will tell you, my read of what I've seen from what's been done in the master plan so far is, again, we hired a consultant that looked sort of narrowly, whose expertise is around master planning of event centers. So they came back in their preliminary analysis, and there are all these things that have been thrown out there on, should we do a multi-use outdoor facility? Should we do a multi-use ballpark? Should we do a multi-use indoor facility, indoor track arena? Should we do an additional sheet of ice for an ice rink, right? They put sort of question marks on all of those, because they said, well, that's more of a policy sort of vision discussion that the commissioners, and that was our feeling, is really the commissioners need to decide what's the big picture vision, and then once we sort of, if you want to go this route, then we can do that more intensive master planning work around that. I'm happy to do that. provide sort of a memo with the updated information on the work that's happened so far on the master plan. Just know that I think my only issue and our at the staff level, our primary desire would be that that the commission have context. So we'll give you the report, but just know that the context is what was really looked at was, as you I think alluded to, Chair Farr, the historical operations of the event center. That's what was looked at as well. If you're going to operate this as an event center, then these are the investments you should make. If you want to build a multi-use outdoor facility or multi-use indoor facility or an ice rink or any of these other things, sure, that's a whole nother process to really look at the development of the campus in that way, if that makes sense. So what I don't want you to do is get a report that says that people would read and say, oh, it favors or opposes. It doesn't really favor or oppose any particular investments. It just says this is really a broader community conversation if you want to go in that route. Does that make sense?
Response to that, Mr. Commissioner Level?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this discussion's making this all convoluted and getting larger or smaller, however you want to look at it. I think I'm more responding to constituents that have contacted me about just information that they feel has been dropped or missed or things that need to come back into the discussion so that the public can have a more accurate picture of really what we have done in the past, where we want to go, and with all the outdoor arena things going on. I mean, it all, in my mind, it's all kind of the same discussion, but I certainly could wait to direct this on another decision after the 22nd of August, once we really hear the details of the outdoor event arena, and then we could vie for your ice rink hockey thing there, hockey man, so, you know.
No, I'm not vying for anything. In this, but I will say, I'm happy to, and I think what we could do is on the 22nd, you suggest this under my announcements, we can provide a memo to the board with here's an update on the master plan. I can address that under my announcements on the 22nd. I won't be here at the board meeting on the 1st or the 8th, so that's partly why. But we can do it on the 22nd, and then you know, you will have some, so that you have that information in advance of the discussion around the outdoor facility. And I will just say, I think it is very important information ultimately for the board to consider as it relates to, like, because whatever the decision is related to the multi-use outdoor facility, there are other conversations, right, about other facilities. And so you're going to be in this position of having to contemplate, all right, what are we going to do this? Are we going to do that? And understanding sort of the complexity of all those different decisions is important, and the work that's happened so far. I just don't want you to get a report in isolation and then draw conclusions without sort of context. So that is all to say, if it's the will of the majority of the board, we can provide a memo, and I can give that sort of briefing, and also have Mr. Buller, who's our Lane Event Center manager, available during my announcements, because he's much more steeped in the information than I am at the meeting on the 22nd in advance of the conversation around the outdoor facility.
Thank you. And before I call in Vice Chair Trigger, just restate that. So before the 22nd, by the 8th, let's say, you'd be able to, during an announcement, provide an update on basically what's been done so far in terms of gathering information regarding the existing fairgrounds without consideration of a multi-use or expansion of the ice arena or a indoor track facility. This is the work that's been done by the consultant thus far.
I can't do it on the 8th.
You can't.
I can do it on the 22nd.
You do it on the 22nd.
Which is the same day, but my commitment would be that we get you the information in advance, and then we do the announcements and have that brief discussion. So you have, at least you have that information to consider in advance of when the item related to the outdoor facility that day. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Because that's what I heard was the desire was like, well, we're having to give some direction on this thing. Shouldn't we at least know what the process was and where we're at related to the master plan?
Very good.
And
Thank you.
I, for one, think that's a good thing for you all to have in front of you.
Body of information to have before us. Very good. Vice Chair Trigger.
Thank you, Chair. And not to belabor, but what you were just saying, for me anyway, really crystallized. First, I want to get on the record and clarify, no one's trying to hide any information. There hasn't been planning being done that we're not revealing. And as someone who has been, you know, this campus is in my district, I serve on the Fair Board, been following this really closely. You said something that sparked for me the difference is, We haven't had that broader visioning about the campus conversation, and that is different than a planning process. And to do a planning process requires the vision. And so, as you mentioned, the planning that's been done has really been more sort of a preliminary assessment of what is possible based on the current, and I use the term vision loosely, vision, which is it's an event center with multiple events, 750,000 visitors a year, and an annual county fair. But unless and until we have a bigger visioning discussion and set a direction for that campus, we're not actually creating a plan. So I just want to really make sure anyone from the public, unless there are other people other than a particular vendor who communicated with all the commissioners their concerns about there being some plan that isn't being revealed, there isn't. There isn't a plan that's being revealed. There's some preliminary assessment based on current and past use. And so that's an important distinction, and that's why I think it should be a fairly simple, straightforward presentation. And I think we all know we're needing to get to a clearer direction on a specific project that's before us that will inform any future visioning and therefore any future planning. Great, thank you.
There's mud.
And that notwithstanding, what you said, Ms. Mokrowski, let's go ahead with that if that is agreeable to everybody. Commissioner Lovell?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chair. The second thing I wanted to bring up in Commissioner's business is in light of all the testimonies and great public testimony we've heard about Land Management Division, I'd like to suggest this. I'd like to suggest a work session and supporting documentation and presentations from Land Management Division and legal to discuss review procedures of Type 2 and Type 3 land use appeals and to explore a code amendment to add an option for applicants and others to seek board review of hearings official appeal decisions. I know that's a mouthful, but I can certainly dictate that back. Or I can send you a memo as you serve the hockey puck my way.
I think I got that.
Okay, all right. So, number 3, this is more convoluted. I'm sorry it's not together. I just want to kind of explore some head nods. Sorry.
Number 2, let's explore that before
All right,
we go to
certainly.
3. So you're asking for a, Ms. Mokrowski, can you repeat what the request is?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure they're head nods, but I heard work session with land management and county council on Type 2 and 3 land use appeals process and a discussion related to a potential code amendment to that process.
To where people can seek board hearings official appeal decisions. Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. Vice Chair Trigger?
This may be for Diana if she's listening, but maybe, do we not have an open assignment? This is a little different because it's specific to basically circumventing or recreating a process around appeals is what I'm hearing this specifically is. But don't we have an open assignment about reviewing processes and resources for land management? Or am I mistaken about that?
I could check on that. This one seems much more specific
Yes.
to the Type 2 and 3 land use appeals. And I think it sounds like on the heels of discussions from last week about the board doesn't have the ability to bring individual discussion items because you have a code. But if you want to have a work session to understand what the process is currently and consider changing that code, you certainly can do that if the board wants to have that work session.
Okay. And a part of that work session would be discussing what it takes to change the code, which is a process that is not something we can just pull out of thin air and do. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, code is an ordinance with a public hearing, 2 readings, a public hearing, and
precisely
vote by the board. So yeah, and I heard that in the request.
Okay, all right. Then let's look for head nods on that one. I'm okay with that. Okay. You have at least 3. Commissioner Lovell?
Thank you, Chair. And number 3, I've received a lot of feedback, obviously. I think we all have on, I think, the top 3 items that are in our county: homelessness, economics, public safety, those kinds of things. And in regard to what other counties in the state are thinking about doing or trying to do in sort of combating some of those effects of houselessness and homelessness, I want to maybe just kind of address this ask, and I'm not really, like I said, it's kind of convoluted. As we're looking at our county, I think the focus and the mission of our county, I would like to see as a recovery county. I think right now, if you look at some of the criticism that Lane County is getting for attracting more and more folks here that tend to come here for our lax and less enforcement of drug laws and that sort of thing, I think some of that discussion I would like to see not stick as a brand. I would like us to maybe rebrand ourselves as a county to be a recovery county, and perhaps maybe we could do that by acting as the public health authority. We could make an emergency declaration on the homeless crisis to adapt policies countywide to better encourage folks to seek recovery rather than stagnation. And I'm just kind of gargling this in my head, but our data from many of the committees that's come before us, we're only really reaching 17 to 21% of our houseless population. The 80% of the folks who decide not to go into recovery or come to do crimes or whatever they do, according to the public safety system folks I've talked to, I think as a public health crisis, we could encourage the citizens who come here maybe looking for trouble to look for recovery instead. As a public health entity, we're having health impacts to our waterways, people camping, doing things. We're having environmental impacts. We're having violent impacts, those kinds of things. So there's a couple of things that I think that we could adopt in policy. I'm not sure I want to get in specific of that, but I think maybe a work session might be the correct thing here, to where we could, as a public health authority, really look at the crisis of health that this is causing on our citizens who are trying to live here in a community, working folks, people, residents, that sort of thing, and act in that realm to adopt some policies that would discourage more of the unwinding of some of the activities that are going on within the houseless community. Does that sound like anything we can wrap their heads around? I can be more specific, but I'm kind of at a loss to be specific because it might get off on some tangents.
Based on your description, Commissioner Lovell, I can't quite
Okay,
grasp all
well,
of that.
okay, let me just ask this, and maybe I'd love to have some help from the other commissioners how we could word this up. Springfield has a policy of no exchanges during in the right-of-ways. People have nicknamed that the anti-panhandling policy. And what my consideration is, based on the fatality stuff and the danger of the roadways we've seen and all that kind of stuff, this could become and is becoming a public health crisis. And us looking at that lens as the public health entity, could we adopt a countywide policy that was similar to the Springfield City Code policy that would effective in our entire county, that would help that activity slow down or come to a stop? Whereas those people now seeking things on their sign would actually go to the services that we provide and finance within our county, rather than do the activity that we've gotten so used to as a blind eye. That's just one example.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm aware of that example and the effect in the county, in the city of Springfield. Now, I'm not prepared to give you a head nod on that as it sits right now, and here's why. There's a lot in that, and what I would prefer to see is if you could put that into a written format and then send it as a memo to each of the board members that you would be proposing that for a future agenda item at the next board meeting. That would give us an opportunity, give me personally an opportunity to think more about what all of the different sections of that are, because it's a pretty broad sweeping policy issue that you're looking at. So that's my suggestion and question for you, Commissioner Lovell, if you would do that. Commissioner Buck?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to make sure that I'm not quite sure we're allowed to send emails to each other outside of a public meeting, and that would be problematic. So at least what I'm hearing is it needs to be fleshed out and maybe reproposed at a future time.
Okay, I can do that. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
So regarding emails to one another, if it's sent to the entire board from another board member,
If it's, well.
council stepping forward.
Myself being called to this.
Good job.
The concern with serial meetings, Chair and Vice Chair Commissioners, thank you for inviting me up. The concern with serial meetings is both the subject of the discussion as well as the number of individuals that are discussing that item. Notifications of the kind that we receive from community members or myself, if it's a single item and it's not being discussed or deliberated within that series of communications, is fine. But of course, it is always a slippery slope, right? Especially when it's initiated from a member of this body. I think the suggestion that was made at the end, and it sounds like Commissioner Lovell would be happy to revise and bring it forward in the public meeting, would be the most protective choice in this circumstance.
So the email itself is not the problem, it's what happens subsequent to the email that is a slippery slope that would be very easy to get engaged with. Okay.
Certainly, if it looks deliberative in any way, or there is a discussion with respect to official business that will be brought later, yes, that is the concern.
Very clear, thank you. All right. So Commissioner Lovell, the latter recommendation?
Yep.
Okay, that's what
Get
we'll
some
move
homework,
forward with
love
that. Looks like you have a good, well, this is not an assignment at this point in time, it's just going to be a revision of the assignment for the a subsequent board meeting. Okay, very good. Thank you, Council.
Thank you.
All right, any further assignment requests? I'm reluctant to say that. Okay, I see no further assignment requests. Ms. Mokrowski, can you tell us what you have so far?
My pen is out of ink, so you can't. Two requests from Commissioner Lovell. One, an update on the Lane Event Center master plan to the board, and so I will do that on August 22nd under County Administrator announcements. We'll provide you with something in writing and then have a brief discussion about that, and I'll have Mr. Buller available for that as well. Two is a work session with land management and county council on type 2 and 3 land use appeals and a discussion related to the code amendment process if the board wished to change that process.
Okay.
That's what I heard.
Any corrections or additions? Okay, that sounds good. Then I'm going to say we do have a need for executive session this afternoon, and in a few moments I'll read us into this afternoon's executive session. We have no need for executive session this morning. Any other business for this morning's agenda? Okay. Then I have an item of other business. This is a motion to reconsider. And it's a motion to reconsider an item that passed in today's agenda, and that was item C. Item 10C, which is Order 2307-1801, appointing one at-large member. The item passed that was appointing Jeremy Shearer as that member. I would like to move to reconsider that, which is a motion that doesn't require any debate or discussion. Just do we have a majority who would agree with me to reconsider that item? In reconsideration, we would discuss the item again. It would be reopened for reconsideration. It would be, the discussion to reconsider would be open. If we decide to reconsider, then the vote would be reopened. So do I have a majority saying, agreeing with me to reconsider that item? Very good. Then we have on the table before us a reconsideration of the vote on item 2307-1801, which is the 3-2 in favor with the Commissioners Buck and Trieger in opposition. So my point for reconsidering is that I didn't have a great deal of time to think about that motion. In fact, I had a handful of moments. I tried to pause the vote in order to think further on it. And a lot of information went into that. So at this point, I would like to reopen the vote for item 2307-1801. I'll call for the vote on reopening the vote for 2307-1801. All those in favor of reconsidering the discussion of the item 20, the discussion of Order 2307-1801, which would reverse the 3-2 vote. It would reverse the 3-2 vote and open it up for a second vote. A discussion to that, or and any all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
No? Nay. So it passes 3-2 to reconsider the vote. So we have before us then item 2307-1801 in the matter of appointing one at-large member to fill a Charter Review Committee vacancy. We no longer have the panel before us, but Ms. Mokrowski, I'll tell you why I wanted to reconsider this. I didn't have a chance to really think about the discussion that went on, and a point that really swayed me was the fact that we have two commissioners, the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion, who did not have any input on the makeup of the Charter Review Committee. So this would give them an opportunity through their vote to have a certain amount of input on that, on the makeup of that committee. I wanted to explore that a little bit and really is that something that should be considered, that that committee was appointed by a previous Board of County Commissioners with no input from the current Board of County Commissioners or two members of the current Board of County Commissioners? So with that, I'll open the discussion before I call for the re-vote on that item. Discussion, Commissioner Buck.
Sure, I'll take a stab at that. It's true that two sitting commissioners did not appoint any particular person because it happened before they were in office. However, the respective commissioners in those seats did so at that time. And so each commissioner at the time appointed somebody of their choosing. And then those 5 people are to actually appoint the remaining folks on that charter committee. That was the charge of the committee. That's how it was set up initially. If that's to be changed at this point, that kind of opens up a box of what about all the other committees that we have folks on? Is that a fair way to really, is that an opening to reevaluate all other people on our other committees? I would say no to that particular point. I think it's important to honor the initial style and makeup of the body. And that's a reason why I voted nay specifically, is because those 5 people that were chosen by commissioners at the time were the ones that were supposed to choose the following folks at large. And it's unfortunate that they didn't have the time to be able to notice a formal vote. If there had been more time, it sounds like, I don't know for a fact, but it sounds like they would have actually voted in favor of the person they brought to us for recommendation. And that is the reason I voted no, because I believe firmly that the way that we originally made the body, those people appointed should be the ones to recommend the vacancy. Now, had that been one of the ones that any one of us commissioners had appointed directly, I think I would have a different view. And if that was an appointment that went vacant from a sitting commissioner, then we should make that choice. But this was an at-large seat appointed by the board at that time. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, see no further discussion. Commissioner Lovell?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that the 2 new commissioners didn't have a say in who was appointed for that certain committee. Obviously, there's certain things that happen at the end of someone's term that set up for things in the future. But I'm curious, as maybe I could ask the council this, is I'm curious that in the charter, it says that those people that serve at the behest of county commissioners, does that behest mean a prior county commissioner or a sitting county commissioner? Whereas meaning that behest is done at the order or request of the person in the seated position. So I'm wondering if there's any discussion on that term.
Thank you, Commissioner Lovell. Chair, if I may. Without looking at that specific provision of the charter, I would not want to wager a guess as to the intent. Also, I'd have to look at the larger context, but I'd be happy to provide you with a supplemental brief on that very question.
Thank you.
So part of the discussion, and I'm going to look at you, counsel, because I need to look at somebody. The part of the discussion is if no one is appointed by the board, then the commission carries on with the 6 original appointees without any shadow of somebody that has to get caught up to speed. Somebody has to be recommended by this Board of County Commissioners. I mean, all of the attached baggage wouldn't be there. We'd have 6 members of the Charter Review Committee. That Charter Review Committee was typically committees have an odd number of members, right? And the odd number of members often is so that there isn't a split vote. So that, because motions die, I mean, a split vote, the noes win, right? that gives a little bit of an advantage to the nose. So that's a part of the consideration that I have right now is if I were to change my vote on this, then I would say that if a subsequent motion came up with the other appointee, I would also vote no on that, which would leave that as with the six members of the Charter Committee as we approved last year on December 6th, I believe it was. So that's my decision. That's my thoughts at this point in time. Will I continue? Will I reaffirm my vote on that and go with the majority that's already been stated? Or will I vote no, and then which would direct us toward having the existing six members remain as the committee? So, with that, any discussion? Then I'm going to call for the.
Real quick.
Yes.
Sorry. I agree with Commissioner Buck. I don't believe this means we open up all our committees. And now, if I will be interested to hear what council says, because if you did have a conflict with your appointed committee member, maybe there is something there. But this is kind of unique that an at-large position did open up, and there's two commissioners that didn't get a chance to appoint those seats. And in my earlier statement, that was what I was getting at.
Thank you. Very good. And okay, I'm not going to say anything further on that. I'm going to call for the vote. So we have before us then Order 2307-1801 in the matter of appointing Jeremy Shearer to fill a Charter Review Committee vacancy. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oops, opposed?
Nay.
Nay. The vote is reconfirmed with 3 aye and Commissioners Buck and Trigger in the nay. Very good. That concludes this morning's business. We'll be moving into executive session at 1:30 today. I'll read us into executive session. The Board of County Commissioners will meet in executive session to consider information or records that are exempt by law from public inspection. This executive session is held pursuant to ORS 192.6602F, which allows the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session, and all other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general public of the session as previously announced. No decision may be made in the executive session. We reserve the right to come back into public session should the need arise. At the sound of my gavel, we are in recess of the Board of County Commissioners, and we'll reconvene as the executive session at 1:30 in the Board of County Commissioners conference room in a hybrid session.